everyone, welcome back to our virtual chat. My name is Gulshan and I'm with America Center Tashkent. And today I'm joined by two wonderful speakers, US librarians, mother and daughter, Anne Hedrich and Emmon Rogers. Hi Anne, hi Emmon.
Hi.
Hi. So I want to introduce you to everyone so that they know where you're from. Anne Hedrich is an academic librarian, Fulbright Scholar at Samarkand State University, and Emmon Rogers works as children's librarian at Kitsap Regional Library in the state of Washington, USA. And today we will learn from them about libraries in the United States. And I want to remind everyone who are joining us from their devices, we want to make it as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, please feel free to put them right here in the comments section, and we'll address them after the presentation. Let's make it as interactive as possible. All right, thanks so much, Anne and Emmon. I know you have a very busy time right now, but you took the time to do this presentation, and we really appreciate it. Okay, over to you.
We think we're ready to go. Yes, we lost Gulshan, I think. There, we are having some connectivity issues, so we hope that people let us know if we cut out or if we lose Gulshan, that we will find a way to work around it.
But we're really excited to talk to you about libraries in the United States, and both being librarians, but working in different kinds of libraries and having different experiences. We see it from a bunch of different perspectives, and so here we go.
Yes, all right.
Did you know that there are more libraries in the United States than there are Starbucks? There's a lot of Starbucks in the United States, but even more libraries. Also, people go to libraries more in the United States than they go to movies. Did you know that? And the Library of Congress is the largest library in the world. It's in Washington, D.C., and it has hundreds of millions of items. And if you took all the bookshelves those items were on and you lined them up, they would kind of run all along the whole East Coast of the United States. It's that long, just many, many kilometers, 1,348 kilometers of books just in that one library. And that serves the US government, and it also serves our whole country.
So we thought we'd talk a little bit about the different kinds of libraries in the United States. And the first one that I get to talk about is public libraries. I'm a public librarian. I work for the entire community, and here are some of the things that they do for the community. They provide information and entertainment resources for free to anybody in the community. It costs no money to sign up for a library card. They also host programs for children and adults. These might be educational, they might just be for fun, they might be for information about elections, all sorts of things. We provide spaces for meetings, research, studying, gathering, discussing, and learning of all kinds. And we spread information on community events, services, and like I said earlier, elections.
It looks like some of the pictures here are showing things that were going on in your public library, Em?
Right. So I added some pictures of some activities that we did in our library. On the bottom left, you can see our community conversation board, where we ask a question and we invite people from the community to answer on Post-it notes, and they just stick up their answers. This question is, what's the most important thing? What's the most important thing in the whole world? And we had a great discussion on Post-it notes about what the most important thing is.
Oh, so can everybody read the other things that people put up on there?
Everybody who walks into the library can read it, yes,
cool.
And respond. And then we also have a picture of our courier who takes items from the library all over the location, all over the 9 locations, which cover an entire county, a region in our state. And his name is George, and for this delivery, he had to deliver many paper goats. He has an interesting job. And then The other two that are pictures about story time, which is a program that we offer for young kids and families, where we do a lot of learning and talking about how to become good readers when the kids are old enough to read. And right here, you can see a whole pile of babies as they figure out what to do with all these toys.
I'm an academic librarian, so I'll talk about academic libraries. And these libraries serve colleges and universities. So the students, the staff, the faculty, all the researchers at universities use these libraries to do their learning and their work. And the collections or the books and all the materials that they have in the library they focus on research and the teaching done at that institution. And most colleges and universities teach a whole bunch of different subject areas. So you'll find books on all kinds of topics in these libraries. And they tend to be pretty big collections of books. And then the libraries also are places that people can study and meet with each other. So a lot of the places in my library, we have couches and tables and desks and chairs, all different kinds of places that people can study in. Really comfortable spaces, or if you need a table to write on, you have that. We have a lot of meeting rooms where you can get together with groups of people and work, maybe study together for tests. Students do that a lot, or prepare presentations for classes and things. And it's just a great place for people to say, hey, meet you at the library and let's do some studying. And just lots of space. You might not find as much space in other places at the university, but there's always space for people to study at the university. And then these libraries help students find information, and they teach them how to do research. And you can see that in the picture on the bottom. There's a librarian helping some students do research in online databases. And they provide computers and internet access, and that's the picture on the lower right there. You can see our information commons, where we just have a lot of computers and also scanners, so people can do their homework and do their research at these computers. They don't have to have their own computer. And then these libraries also have a lot of unique collections and special to the area, or maybe older materials. And they're working pretty hard to digitize these things if they can, and put them up on web pages so everybody can access that information, where you used to have to come to the libraries to do that research. But now you can just get on the web and search for it. So.
Another kind of libraries is school libraries. So these are mostly in elementary, middle, and high schools in the United States, but they also have libraries in private schools, and then sometimes just libraries that visit different kinds of schools if the schools aren't big enough to have their own library. So these libraries are designed to serve students with whatever their needs are and help them learn. They help students find books and information for schoolwork. They provide reading materials. So if a kid wants something fun to read, they might provide that. And then librarians also often help teachers plan lessons, and sometimes even teach lessons on beginner's research to students.
And the last major kind of category of library, or kind of library, are special libraries. And these libraries are found in companies or businesses. Sometimes they're in government agencies. They might be in hospitals or other kinds of organizations like that are different than what we talked about before with the public and the different kinds of school libraries and university libraries. So they specialize in the needs of their home organization. So if they are a hospital library, they're going to have a lot of medical information, and they'll have librarians there that know how to access that medical information and how to get it for doctors and nurses and hospital staff that need that information. Or if they work in, like in the picture, maybe they specialize in really old materials. And so they have people that specialize in that as well. And they tend to find information for people in their libraries. They don't focus on teaching as much, but they get the information that's needed for the people that work there. So
you might have guessed there are many different kinds of librarians. There are the kinds of librarians that focus on public libraries. I'm one of those. I'm a children's librarian. There are also teen librarians and adult librarians. And then there are reference librarians who are there, whether in a public library or an academic library, to help people find the answers to their questions, whatever their questions are, or meet their other information goals. Then there are instruction librarians who might sound a lot more like teachers, like her. And there are collection development librarians who help to buy materials, lots of materials for libraries, and hopefully expand their online resources as well. So different kinds of databases, or maybe different kinds of streaming services, if the library might offer one of those kinds of things. Then there are the kinds of librarians that focus on those special libraries that we already talked about: medical librarians, law librarians, copyright librarians, because copyright is a big subject in the United States. These librarians are actually so specialized that they can offer advice about how to stay within copyright law in the US. And
I was going to say, you might wonder what catalogers are.
Yes.
And so catalogers are the people that kind of keep things organized. There's a catalog record, a picture of it on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. And so when you search either in a card catalog or in a computer catalog to see what's in a library, then these are the people that put information onto the card or into the database so you can find it. And they put the call numbers on it and everything. So without catalogers, everything would be just a big mess. So we're really grateful for catalogers.
Yes, they have to be masters of many systems.
Yes, it's true.
And speaking of masters, in order to be a professional librarian in the United States, you actually have to have a master's degree. It is a 2-year master's degree usually. It's a shorter one, but it does require you to have a lot of specialized knowledge about research or about, in my case, child development or program planning or teaching, or for catalogers, a lot of knowledge about different kinds of systems for organizing information and how to make those most accessible to everybody.
Yeah. And you don't have to have a master's in library science to work in a library, but you do need to have that degree to be a professional librarian. So in libraries, you'll probably find people that are professional librarians, but you also find people that work there and don't have that degree.
Yay, that's me. So my experience in libraries, I thought I'd tell just a very short story because I am only just starting out. But after I finished my undergraduate degree, which was in English and Scandinavian Studies, 2 majors, I decided to work for a bookmobile, which is a library on wheels. It's a big truck with a library in the back that makes many stops, especially in remote areas where it's difficult to get to books. And I decided to work for them, so I drove a really big truck, and that inspired me to go to library school to get my master's degree. When I was in library school, I was at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, so you can see a lot of those libraries were there. And while I was in library school, I did my practical work and my paying work in these 3 libraries. I worked in the geography library, which focused on meeting the needs of that department at this university, particularly for researchers in that department on finding the information that they need and also helping people produce research books, publish their things. And then I worked in special collections, which focuses on especially old and rare materials. For that, you have to go into vaults and very carefully put on gloves and bring out these very old materials. I think we had a Gutenberg Bible. Ooh, yes, we had a Gutenberg Bible, which is several hundred years old, and we had some papyrus manuscripts as well.
Thousands of years old.
Thousands of years old.
Wow.
Which is very exciting. And then I also worked in the Cooperative Children's Book Center, which is part of the reason I became a children's librarian. It is a book review center, which takes data and publishes data on children's literature in the United States, both publishing trends and also diversity trends, or diversity statistics in the United States. So that was part of my job, and I thought it was very important to represent many different cultures and races in children's literature. So I got really excited about that and became a children's librarian. Before I left Wisconsin, I did work for Madison Public Library as a bike-mobile librarian. So I rode a bicycle with a 400-pound trailer full of books, and I rode them to parks and took it to children's programs so that people who can't always come into the library can still check out books and enjoy library services. And then finally, I now work at the Kitsap Regional Library in Washington State, where I'm a children's librarian in one of our 9 library branches.
Cool. And I've worked in libraries, a bunch of libraries too. I've actually been lucky to work in all 4 kinds of libraries over my career. And I'll just tell you the ones I worked in order. I too went to the University of Wisconsin in Madison and worked in the geography library. And although I did that as a student worker and then I graduated and I did other jobs, I remember very happily that job, and that was the thing that caused me to want to be a librarian. But while I was in library school, I did an internship at a government library for the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, and this library focused on animal health. And so they're monitoring diseases in wild animals, and especially there was a real focus on ducks, at least when I was there. So we were trying to help the ducks. And then I also volunteered at a Forest Service library, so dealing with forests, with trees. And that was right after I finished library school. And then my main job, or my longest job, is at the Merrill Kazir Library at Utah State University. And I've been there at Utah State University just about 30 years, and most of the time in that library. For a little bit of the time, I was in the next library, the Quinney Library, and that had a focus on natural resources also. And my undergraduate degree was in natural resources, so this made a lot of sense for me to work in these libraries with those specialties. And even the next library was a nature center library. So we have a nature center in our town, and it teaches adults and mostly children, I think, about wild places and animals and plants and everything, and gets them out into nature. But they also had a small collection of books, and they came and said, will you please help us organize our books so people can use them? And so I helped them design a system, and actually Emmon helped. She was a kid then, but she helped set up that little library at the Nature Center. And then I was kind of curious about working in schools as a librarian, and I was able to get a certification as a school librarian. And I did some student teaching in the library, so student librarianing kind of, in the North Cache Middle School Library. And then I worked in another school called the Cache Valley Learning Center, and they didn't have a very organized library. And so I helped them organize that library. And I also created a library club for kids, and we just stayed after school, and we actually ran that library, and the kids learned a lot about how libraries are organized and why we do different things. And that was a pretty fun thing to do. And then I also did get to work at the Cache County Bookmobile, like Emmon did. And then currently I'm working with the Samarkand State University Library here in Samarkand, Uzbekistan. I was gonna say, there's a picture of the bookmobile on the upper left, so that both Emmon and I drove, big truck driving. And then also the other picture is a library research guide that I created as an academic research librarian for people in one of the departments at my university, the mechanical and aerospace engineers. And that was to help them with their research.
Mm-hmm.
Say anything?
I think one of the main focuses for both of us has been that there's a quote that I'm pretty sure I heard sometime but couldn't find when I looked it up. So if you find it, tell me. But which is that if knowledge is power, libraries are powerhouses. And to me, that means that the way you organize information and who gets access to that information really matters. So for both of us, I think we focused a lot on making sure that as many people as possible have access to the information that they need to meet their goals and be powerful.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
So speaking of main goals of libraries, the American Library Association, as one of the older library associations, is pretty lucky to have this Library Bill of Rights. Based on the Bill of Rights from the US Constitution, it outlines some of the principles that should be followed by all libraries as forums for information and knowledge. Since we all have this in common, libraries ought to be following these principles in order to hope that we meet our main goals. The first one is that libraries should provide materials for their interest, information, enlightenment, and should not discriminate against certain origins, backgrounds, or views of the creators. So this means that all kinds of materials should be found in libraries. And you shouldn't decide, this isn't a material that I want somebody to see, so I'm not going to include it in this library, because that material might be very useful to somebody, and it is not up to libraries to judge whether or who gets to see that. The second one is that libraries should provide information from all points of view. So very similar is that it should cover all points of view, even if we don't agree with them. This is very difficult sometimes, particularly if those points of view feel like they might be dangerous or they might hurt somebody. It's very difficult, and it's a conversation that we are having in libraries in the USA right now about how do we handle situations where, even though everybody has a right to see their viewpoint in the library or to study different viewpoints in the library, where do we draw the line to make sure that that doesn't cause anybody harm? It's very difficult. It's an interesting conversation. And then the third one is, as centers of information, libraries should challenge censorship. Censorship is when certain information is not allowed into the hands of everybody. As librarians and as libraries, we believe that everybody has the right to access that information and make the decisions for themselves. Fourth, libraries should work with those who fight for free expression and free access to ideas. Again, very similar. Everybody, we believe, in the United States in libraries has the right to express their opinion and the right to go and decide for themselves among all the opinions which is the best and which they agree with. Fifth, people of all origins, age, background, and views have a right to use the library. I like this one. I think it's my favorite. This just means the library is for everyone, and for no reason can someone say, no, you shouldn't be allowed in. And then finally, an interesting addition, meeting rooms should be available to the public. So most libraries, except for very, very specialized ones in the United States, will offer a space where people can gather and discuss, and they can't be stopped from using those meeting rooms because of their beliefs or because of organizations that they are affiliated with.
So we talked a lot about libraries and different kinds of libraries and librarians, and a lot of times people think, oh, libraries are places where you have to be quiet and people are just quietly reading books, and really libraries are a lot more than that. They are active places. There's a lot going on in libraries. They're community gathering and learning places. The libraries are in buildings, but they're also out in the community, visiting the community. And there is the bike mobile that Emmon rode, and the trailer she pulled is all unfolded. And then you can set up the books, and it looks pretty appealing. You want to go and visit it. And then libraries are also beautiful and inspiring spaces for us. So we can go and be inspired to learn more, find out about our world, find out about ourselves.
A place to have great ideas.
Yeah. And that's our presentation. And we hope that you'll have some questions.
Thank you so much, Anne and Emmon. That was so interesting. And can you hear me?
Let's see.
Okay,
we are
so
still on the video. We can't quite tell if we're still on the stream because our whole screen is our presentation. But after one more moment of these pretty pictures, I think we're going to take it down and take questions.
Yeah, I think you can take it down because are you still going to use your PowerPoint?
No.
No. Okay, I took it down, so you can go and go ahead and close it. You can see yourself. Yay!
Yay!
All right. So should we go to our questions?
Yes, please.
Our first question is from Dilnaza Mardanova. Hi, Emmon and Anne. It was so nice to talk to both of you at the ACQ yesterday. What is your top tip on how to interest more people in reading more?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. And also, we enjoyed meeting you at the ACQ yesterday. The American Corner Karshi, really great place if anybody wants an amazing place to visit. Very friendly and willing to learn. What would you say for interesting people in reading more?
I think one thing that I've seen people do is talk about books that they like and explain why you like it. Sometimes people in libraries especially even specialize in talking about books, and they'll explain it, and they'll make, sometimes they'll explain it away. They say, well, and the story starts like this, but I'm not going to tell you the end. So, but it makes you curious about it. And then once you find out one good book, you often want to find out another one.
Yes, I agree. I think share the books that you love, right? If libraries are community spaces, then it's a great place, hopefully, for people to share the things they love about reading. And that maybe doesn't just get limited to staying in the library. Maybe when you go home, you say, oh, I read this amazing book today, you have to check it out. And when people talk to their friends and their family about things that they love and things that they're learning about and they're reading about, that's, I think, a fast way for reading to become more popular.
And I think sometimes they're shared in person, and sometimes they're shared over social media. There's a lot of different ways that you can share.
Yeah, and one final thought on that is that I keep forgetting, and in my job when I work with kids, I keep forgetting that one of the fastest ways to get to any goal that you have is to get more information about that subject. And in libraries, that information is completely for free. In libraries, that information is completely for free, and usually you have a librarian who is really excited to help you find that information. So you always have somebody on your team who wants to help you find something interesting to read and some way to meet your goals.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry. Do you have another question? I'll see it.
I'm going to take this next question as well, I guess.
Okay. Marshall Armstrong is asking if can you give phone numbers or usernames on messengers to keep in touch for those who are always in the search of knowledge and information. I'm not sure if that's our presenters' numbers or American Center Tashkent numbers.
Well, American Center Tashkent, you should totally feel free to give your numbers. Usually, I don't give my personal personal number or messenger information, just because I have a lot of teenagers in my job who would text me all the time if I did. So I can't give that out, but thank you so much. If you are interested in following some of the work that I do, my library has a YouTube channel for kids that talks about the news and is a discussion show for children about news. It's called News Kids Can Use, and you can find it on the Kitsap Regional Library YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. And we'll post the link to the YouTube channel here in the comments later so that people could see it and get involved.
Anything that they should, so what's some good follows? So I like to give my recommendations for good social media follows. What are some good follows for you?
Actually, as an academic librarian, I follow kind of more boring stuff for most people. So I get pretty excited with the engineering librarians list, and we talk about how to answer questions for people. And so, yeah, the social media thing is not as much something that I do, particularly in my job. There are people in my library that do social media stuff, and they suggest fun things But it's just not something that I pay as much attention to.
Your favorite author or your favorite subject, if there's an expert in that subject, they probably have a podcast or they probably have social media. And that's a great thing to follow if you're interested in learning more about those things.
And I think sometimes they recommend who they follow also, right? And so that can lead you to more cool things to follow.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Dilnoza. What are the most popular books among American young people?
Ooh, I don't know.
Well, from my research, the most popular books among Americans, including young people, but all Americans, are young adult books. So books for teens, usually books that talk about real issues in the world, because everybody wants some new ideas about how to solve the problems they see in the world. And I think adventure books are always a good go-to.
Including like fantasy as adventure and stuff too, yeah. And what about historical fiction? Do you think people read those very much? That was something I always liked reading, because then you find out about times and places.
People don't read historical fiction as much. Kids really like it more, but they like it if it's funny. The funny historical fiction. So, and funny books in general. I think it's graphic novels, for instance, are a way that a lot of learning gets hidden in book form, and then the kids are really excited about that.
Thank you. We actually, here in America Center Tashkent, we're trying to, refresh our books collection, and we were looking for very nice books. So thank you for those recommendations. They are very precious for us.
Cool.
Jahangir Mirza is saying that that's a great topic. Thank you, Jahangir Mirza.
Thank you.
All right. So I would like to ask you, because Emmon, you are a librarian in a children's library, and what is the age restriction for people who want to go to like a regular library, and for kids? Is there like a particular age where people have to, switch to a regular library after going to kids' library, children's
That's a
library?
great question.
That is a really good question. So the children's section of my library is actually right in the back of the regular library. So it's because as soon as they get tired of the books in the children's section, they can go straight over to the teen section and then straight over on to the adult section. But one of my recommendations is always that people shouldn't worry about the level of the book. They should worry about whether it's an exciting topic. So if children are bored reading the children's books about sailing or history or physics, they think they're too easy and they think they're boring, it's time to move on.
When I go to the public libraries, I go to the children's section because I love their books. I love the picture books. They're so fun to look at. So you can go anywhere that works for you.
Yeah. We like them when they're very, very young, though, and then just stay with us until they're very, very old.
That's great. All right, thank you. And a question to you as an academic librarian. You're working now in Samarkand State University's library. And are there any difference in the libraries in the US universities and in Uzbekistan universities, like from your experience?
Yeah, and I don't have experience in a lot of academic libraries in Uzbekistan, but I know a big difference that I see in the library here at Samarkand State and my library is that, and generally in libraries in the United States, is in the United States, people can go and get their own books. So you look up what book you want, and then you walk to the shelves and you go get your book. And here there are people that help get your books. I'm not sure if it's all the books, but many of them that's the case. And so that was something that was different for me to see and something to get used to. But I don't know, the similarities really strike me too. And we're there to provide the books for the research, for the university, for the students, for the researchers, so that they can get what they want, what they need to do their learning and their research and everything. So the libraries in both places are trying really hard to make sure we have the things that they need.
Thank you. You mentioned this bookmobile project that you were doing, and this is really something new that I haven't heard about here in Uzbekistan. Could you please tell us like a little bit more details about it? Do people have to pay anything when you come and they just want to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or any details, everything would be very interesting to hear about.
Oh, great. Yeah. Some history first. It's expensive to build a library, right? And so many times those libraries are only built in big city centers and maybe not in small villages or small towns, or even if people live on farms, they have no way to get to the information. So in the late 19th century in the US, I think, there was a larger project to start taking those books and that information out to the farms. And that started with horse-drawn carriages and horses and just putting books in saddlebags and riding them out to whoever needed them. And then it became a cart, and then more recently has become trucks.
Yeah, and you can fit a surprising number of books in one of those trucks, because you have shelves from the bottom where all the kids' books are, so the little kids that come in there can see them, all the way up to the top, and they even have stools that you stand on to reach the ones on the top. So they're very efficient in organizing. You can put a lot of stuff in there.
Yeah, and it is free usually to sign up. You usually just have to be to live in the area that the bookmobile goes, and then know where the stops are, and they usually follow a schedule. And then you can take out books, audiobooks, movies. They have a lot of stuff in there.
And they'll help you answer questions you have. If you're trying to find out some information, they'll recommend, the librarian in the bookmobile will recommend a good book for you to read if you have a topic you're interested in, or you have an author that you like. You'd say, but I've read all that author's books, now what can I read? And the librarian will know another good author for you to read.
And I think this can be especially important if people don't have cars, or if they're very old and they can't leave home. It can be really nice that the books come to them. The library comes to them.
Yeah, it comes to all the smaller communities and stops out in the rural areas. Yeah, and it's pretty fun. People really look forward to it. They wait for the bookmobile might come to their stop every week, or maybe even every 2 weeks. And they wait for that time. When I was little, my neighborhood had a bookmobile stop, and I just couldn't wait for the bookmobile to come. I thought that was really neat. And so I was really excited when I grew up to be able to drive a bookmobile. That was like kind of a dream thing from when I was a kid. Like, wow, this thing's so amazing. And then I got to drive one. And plus it's fun driving trucks.
Yeah, a little scary, but mostly fun.
Yeah.
But other countries have mobile libraries. There's a somewhat famous one, Book Burro, so a donkey that takes a library on his back and into the mountains. And there are book camels in some places. I believe there's a book boat that goes up a long river, so that just make sure that people can get the things they want.
And bikes too, where
bikes.
So you can't go as far on a bike usually, but you can get out to maybe parks in a town or something. And so people are in the park and they can also get books. They don't have to go a separate place to the library. So lots of ways to get books out to people.
Being a librarian is very good exercise.
It is.
This is an amazing project for the community. Wonderful. Okay, question from Janaza Alimardonova. Who does the most work in making kids interested in books, author or illustrator?
Oh, well, I want to say me, but you know. But I think that the best situation is when there is a good partnership between the author and the illustrator. That if they can work together, then you have absolute magic. If they have to work by themselves, then the book may just not go as far. I think it also depends on what kind of kid. So if the child is much more focused on colors and pictures, then maybe illustrator. And if the child is much more interested in words and speaking, then the author.
That's a diplomatic answer.
Mm.
But it's also true. I mean, it just depends on the situation. So it's really wonderful when they do work together.
Some of my favorites are both too. Some of my favorite authors and illustrators are both.
They do both. They write it and they do the pictures.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What would be the best age for a kid to start reading by themselves?
How about when they're ready? I mean, when they are trying, when they're making the effort to do it. I think, before, when they're really little, you read to them, and reading to, well, Emmon can probably explain this a lot better because it's her area. I'm speaking here as a parent, kind of just sitting down and reading with our kids when they're really little and they get used to reading and they really grow to love it, and it comes more easily to them, and it's something that they're interested in doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And once they start to reach for the book and they want to do that themselves, then that's the best age. I would say that often that happens. They start to pretend, like age 3.5. They don't know the words really, but they'll try. And then maybe when they're somewhere just around 5, then they can start to read on their own. But I think the important thing is what she said, is when they're ready. Because if you push kids to read earlier, often they will not like reading for a long time in the future because, they were forced to do it.
Yeah. And it's so it can range. It can range
Absolutely.
in ages, by years. And so expecting it to happen at a certain age, well, don't be disappointed. You just have a kid who is going to be interested in that a little bit later.
One of the best things to do if you want your child to be a reader is to read yourself a lot. Even if you have work to do and you have to do work on your phone, if you hide your phone behind a book, then the child will see you reading and think, that's the thing we do. We like that.
Yeah, so read yourself and read your kids.
Yeah.
That's a great tip.
We have a big theme in the United States for, I think it's in our school libraries, I see it. It says, read to me 20 minutes every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're trying to tell all the parents of the school, and these are kids from 5 to, 11 or 12 years old. Parents, read to these kids every day 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And we say it in English, the main language of the United States, but also it's in Spanish, because we have a lot of Spanish speakers in the United States. And it's been posted up over the school door. So that's how important that the schools feel reading is.
Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you. Dilnaza Mardonova is saying that she's also curious about your own favorite books. Can you please share what you usually read?
I have a hard time picking a favorite book. I have a favorite bookshelf. It's the whole shelf of all my favorite books.
That's pretty good. Narrowed it down.
I think I studied literature in English literature in university. So I think on my favorite bookshelf right now, I have The Odyssey, which was translated by a woman, and it's very, very interesting and much different perspective than the ones that the men translated. And I think it's really good. I just finished reading War and Peace, Tolstoy.
Wow.
Which was long. And maybe that one wasn't so exciting, but I love to read teen books. So I love adventure books, and I like to read books also. I think I've recently gotten very interested in the stars and in space. So I like to read books about that.
Yeah. And I like reading books. I like reading fiction and nonfiction. An example of a good book that I read lately, actually a couple of them. One was on navigation, and it's just how we know how to move around in the world. Like if sailors on an ocean, how do they know where their ship is, and how do they know where to go? And they can use stars, and they can use these different instruments, and they know how to read currents and the waves and things. And then on land, there are all kinds of ways to know where you are too. And it was just a really in-depth book, and I realized how much there is to navigation. And then I read another really interesting book recently. It was History of Siberia, of Siberia and Russia, and it was just like, wow, there's a lot going on for many years, and so that was super interesting. And I like nature writing a lot. People that write about nature, and if they write really beautifully about it, I really enjoy that. One author I really like is Annie Dillard, because there is some magic in the way she describes things and helps you see things that are out there in nature. So yeah, I know there's just different things, but I like reading a fiction book and a nonfiction book at the same time, because sometimes I'm in the mood for a story, and sometimes I'm in the mood for something that I just want to learn about something more.
Yeah.
But always, if they're good writers, which the published books usually are, that makes it a real joy to read. You just want to sit down. I can't wait till it's the time of day when you get to read.
Yeah. One good tip, I think something we say in libraries is that libraries should have books that are windows and mirrors for people. So something that lets you see into another world and something that lets you know yourself better. So I think a good tip is to pick books that are a window and a mirror for you. Go back and forth.
Wow, interesting. All right, so our next question is from Firdaus Dusmatov. Thanks for the webinar. In the digital age, the topic of libraries is a very topical issue. Many people today are trying to read through the screen. I have a few questions. Do you think people's attitude towards books and the library may disappear in the near future? Can public libraries compete with schools and universities in education in the future?
A few different questions there. So some people really enjoy reading books as electronic books. So they're reading, I think that's what you mean by reading through the screen. And certainly a lot lighter to carry if you have a lot of books. And they're the physical books, it's quite a load, but on your computer or tablet or however your phone, however you're reading your books, it's a lot lighter that way. So there's some definite advantages to that. But I think there was some talk for a while when they were first coming out, regular books go away. Now we find people really love reading physical books too. They like holding the books in their hand. They like seeing the different type in it, or the kinds of paper they're made out of, or the illustrations are better, I think, generally in a book than they would be on a screen. Or I guess they're just really different. So I think they'll both be around. People will be reading on screen and in books. Anything to add to that, Em? Or
Yeah, I think as long as there is some kind of book, people will need help finding the one that's best for them, or they'll need help accessing them. So for instance, my library buys a lot of ebooks, and they buy lots of copies, and then they put them out on screens so you can get it on your phone. But without that, the library buying it, many people couldn't afford to have that ebook. Or an audiobook, for instance. Those are really expensive and nobody really wants to buy them for themselves. So I think as long as there's information out there, there will be a need for people who help navigate that information. And we know now that there's a lot of information out there. There's tons of stuff online. And often you need help figuring out which is good information and which is not good information, and how to tell the difference, and how to find what you actually really need. So I don't think that public libraries will probably have to compete. At least the way I see it, public libraries are there to give education around topics that aren't covered by schools or universities. Or sometimes if somebody can't afford to go to university, maybe they can go to the public library and still get an education that way. So I think it's not so much competition as a wise person uses all their resources that they have. And so they could go to university and go to the public library, and then you have twice the information.
And I can say that a lot of the libraries, or the books in my library, wouldn't be very interesting to a lot of people to read. They're interesting to the specialists in those areas, the people that are researching that, the students that are trying to learn that, but it's pretty advanced level of writing. So the public libraries provide the information that everybody can access.
Yeah.
So if you want to learn about a topic, you can go to a university library, but I bet you'd find a lot more interesting books that would teach you what you want to know in a public library.
Yeah, agreed.
Thank
Good, a
you.
lot of questions in there.
Yeah. Moving on, Eleanor's vlog. Eleanor is asking, saying good day, ladies. What kind of books are better to broaden children's horizons? Sci-fi or real-life based stories?
To broaden horizons, I think that's my area, yeah. To broaden horizons, I would say it's difficult to explain. I always choose one book or two books that are exactly what the child already likes, exactly what they're interested in. And then maybe 4 that are close, that are related, but not exactly the same. So maybe if they really like to learn about space, then you give them 2 books that are nonfiction about space, because that's what they want. But if they want, and then you give them 3 books about sci-fi, because the sci-fi takes place in space, and that might get them interested in more kinds of books. So you kind of lead them on little by little. Mm-hmm. And then the same thing for real life-based stories. I think if you can relate to something they're already interested in, then you already have a win. You already are on your way down that path of broadening horizons.
Yeah. And I think, they both have value, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
They just, and for some people, sci-fi really speaks to them, and other people, they're like, this doesn't, I don't understand what they're saying or talking about, or it's just not real. I can't relate to it. I want a real life based one. So it's good we have them both, and people could find what speaks to them.
Yeah. It's good to try lots of kinds of things. I mean, maybe you'll find out you don't like it, but that's okay. Then you at least know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So you both are librarians. Could you tell us what was like the main reason why you decided to choose being a librarian and like choose it as your career?
Yeah.
Go first.
Why? I think I mentioned I worked in a library in college just as a student worker and helping people. And I thought it was really interesting and really fun to work there. But that wasn't the area that I studied. I studied in natural resources. So I worked in some different jobs for a few years. And then it's like, I really enjoyed working in the library. Maybe I do want to reconsider doing that. And decided to go to library school. And that confirmed it for me that this is what I want to do. And I love working in libraries because I get to work with people. I really like to talk to people, and I get to learn what they're researching, and it's always so interesting. I'm always learning new things. And I like helping people. That it's pretty exciting when you can get to something that they're looking for that's just right for them. But I also like that information side of it. So I get to think about how things are organized and how we can find things and where's the best place. And I get to be kind of a detective and find things and help people solve information problems. So it's the people and combining that with information and all the knowledge that's out there and having access to it. So that's why I like it. That's how I got there.
And I thought I would never do exactly what my parents did.
I didn't think you did.
But then after I did my undergraduate degree, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was trying to figure out what could be most helpful that I could do. How do I help people the most? And I read a biography of Nelson Mandela, who said that his librarian in his village helped him understand the world in a way that made him want to make the world better. So I thought, well, if I don't know how to solve all the problems, maybe I can tell somebody and they'll figure it out, how to find the information that they need. So it was that, and then as I got into it more, and as I drove the bookmobile, I began to realize that I had an opportunity to help people fulfill their potential. And maybe recognize gifts that they didn't know they had. And it's just so nice when somebody really takes a moment to see you and to figure out what it is you can offer the world and try to help you.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. And next question from Dostan John Bakhrif is kind of related to what we just talked about. Good evening, Ms. Anne and Eman. What do you think, what are the best qualities of a good librarian?
I think you have to want to help people. You have to like people and want to do nice things for them. And maybe you also should like books or like the materials, but the main thing has to be that you like people and want to help.
Yeah. And I think that you want to help everybody. You try to, like Emma was saying, help them find their potential. And in each person, it might be a little bit different, and it might not be something that you understand that well or anything, but you're still going to try to help them get there. That's, and I think a curiosity about the world too, because then that makes you want to find out about people, but also about all these books and all these resources, everything that's out there that you can start offering people. And you see a lot more when you're curious, and hopefully you can spread that to other people.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, looks like we're done with the questions. And it was a wonderful talk today. Thank you so much. And thank you, Eman. I think many people would want to become librarians now after our chat.
Yes, join us.
A lot of people don't know they want to be a librarian until they try something else first. I don't know why. You don't think of librarian first often, and they try something else, like, wow, wait, that's a cool thing. So maybe we'll see you working in a library soon.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thanks so much.
Or just see you in a library. Maybe we'll just see you in a library, and that would be pretty great.
Yes. And I also want to thank you for being in American Corner Karshi yesterday and meeting kids there and doing the story time with them. And we still get this positive feedback. Thank you so much. That was great. We will post some pictures later on our social media. And I also want to thank all our viewers for wonderful questions. Thank you for being with us this evening. And don't forget that tomorrow we have a chai chat. Same time, 5 p.m. Tashkent time, with Heather McNamara, who is an American educator and a runner. And she will be talking to us and sharing how running changed her life. So join us tomorrow too.
Okay, well, thank you for having us.
Yes,
it's been wonderful.
Thank you so much. We hope to have you once again one day.
Come visit the library.
Yes, yes. Bye.